Okay, today I want to talk to you about doing some basic computer repair tips or troubleshooting that pretty much anybody can do. The last couple start to get a little more advanced, need to do a little bit of typing, but honestly, anybody can do it. You can just follow step by step with my instructions. And these will help with if your computer's acting just a little bit strange, programs not opening as quickly as they should, for example, or your start menu not showing all the applications that it should. And for the applications not opening as quickly, I don't just mean 1 or 2 seconds. I mean taking 30 seconds for Chrome or Word to open if that's not already normal. Most of those programs will open pretty quickly. And you'll know how long it usually takes for your applications to open. So if it takes an exceedingly long amount of time for an app to open, you can try these steps. And these are for Windows 10 mostly. They will go back to Windows 8 because Windows 8 and Windows 10 are very similar. And the first few will definitely work on Windows 7 as well. The very last one, I don't know if it works on Windows 7 or not. As a quick disclaimer, none of these repair tips will cause any damage to a computer. They are just looking for errors and they will replace them. But when you do any kind of computer troubleshooting and that, there's always a possibility that your computer is on the brink of failure, and these could push it over that edge. But if you follow these instructions, you cannot hold me responsible for any final outcome of that. Another, I guess I could say tip or a suggestion would be, if you're not already, back up your data. That is something I talk about in my blog quite often. Back up, back up, back up. And these tips that I'm going to offer should work, or should these tips that I'm about to offer will now these tips that I'm about to offer may not help if your computer is in serious shape and needs to be taken to an actual technician for work. But if your computer is just acting a little strange, you should still be able to do your data backup. So definitely do that if you have not already on any kind of regular basis. Back up before you try these tips and start doing regular backups. The first thing that pretty much anybody should know to do if their computer is acting a little strange is just to do a computer restart. I know it's a little cliche and people throw it out in TV shows and movies all the time. Did you restart the computer? But honestly, that fixes so many problems. Windows and Mac, even Linux, although Mac and Linux will maybe run for a lot longer before they start to show weirdness. They're not perfect, but Windows definitely needs to be rebooted on a semi-regular basis. And if a normal restart doesn't fix it, you can try a shutdown. There's not a whole lot of difference between them, but sometimes a shutdown does clear out a little more memory than a restart does. Part of that is because today's computers do try to keep as much information in memory when they're asleep, or honestly even in today's shutdown mode on Windows 10. That way they will open up, or seem to open up or turn on a lot quicker. If you have a fairly new computer, it should start up in honestly just a couple of seconds. But part of that is because once it's up and running, they store information in RAM and the hard drive, and even when you do a shutdown, it actually saves that information and pulls it when it restarts. So my first real tip of this is to hold down the shift button while you click on the shutdown when you click on start. You click on your start button, you go to the power indicator on the menu, and then when you see the options here, don't just click on shutdown. Press and hold down the shift button on your keyboard while you click on the shutdown. Obviously, I am not going to do that on my screen, but when you do that, that tells the computer to actually clear out the RAM and the hard drive information that it normally keeps that could be bogging down your computer a little bit, or whatever the problem is, that could get erased now. It will take a little bit longer probably to do the shutdown because it wants to clear out that memory. Let it set for a couple minutes if you have to. It shouldn't take 5 or 10 minutes, but I have seen it do that, so don't be worried if it does. One of the worst things you could do on your computer is force a power off by holding the power button in until it shuts off, especially while it's in a shutdown mode like this, because the computer is closing out files and getting ready to do the shutdown. Holding the power button to force it off while it's doing some of that could actually cause serious damage to your Windows. I definitely tell people give it at least 20 minutes before you want to press and hold that power button in to force the shutdown if it's sitting on the shutdown. As long as your screen has the little swirly circles and says that it's shutting down, give it 10-20 minutes before you try to do anything more extreme with forcing the power off. Then when you turn the computer back on, again, it'll probably take a little bit longer than normal because it's not pulling all that stuff that it normally has in memory. And wait. Actually, I probably should have mentioned that as my first tip when I talk to people when I'm doing a repair on a computer, if they're hanging out with me or if they're trying to show me what's the problem is. People want to click on this and click on that, double click on it because things are taking a second or two longer than they want. Patience is one of the biggest things you can have while working on a computer. And hopefully, once the computer restarts after that shift shutdown option, hopefully everything will be working fine. I have specifically seen that work with Chrome not opening, as I mentioned earlier, either at all or being very slow, and other weird things. It's kind of hard to think of a couple right now, but I think I've seen other programs also not open at all for some strange reason, but doing a shutdown or the shift shutdown clears out everything and they work perfectly fine. If that doesn't take care of the problem, the next thing you can do is use a command called sfc, which stands for System File Checker. And that will scan through your various Windows files, and if it sees some of the main ones are missing or corrupt, it will try to replace or repair them. Windows 10 especially is very robust. It can continue to work even if some system files are corrupt or even completely missing. It will compensate in various ways. In fact, that might be some of what it does during a very long shutdown or restart. If it takes longer, it may have noticed a problem when it was last running, and it might actually be trying to replace some of those files on its own. But SFC will make it do that whenever you ask it to. This one you do need to open up a window and do some typing. And you've, again, probably heard this mentioned if you've watched any kind of TV show where they talk about how they're working on computers or anything. You open up a command prompt, which is abbreviated with CMD for command. And then you get a DOS window, is also another way to explain that window. Oh, that's becoming less and less common these days, the word DOS, but it actually can still be used in the background to do a lot of repairs on a computer. To do that, you click on your Start button, or you can click on, or tap, I guess, the Start button that's on most keyboards on the computer. At this point, you don't need to go anywhere else, click on anything else. You can just start typing. And the Windows search will automatically come up. You don't need to click on the search bar if your computer still shows that down here, which I believe they've actually removed that on the most recent Windows update on their own. I removed it myself because I never use it. I always just use the Start button. But you can type anything here once you click on that Start button and be able to open anything you want quite easily. If it's something very obvious, it's at the top and highlighted, you can just hit Enter. But we are doing CMD, and at this point, as I have highlighted in yellow here, you need to be in a administrator window. And when you do this search, there's an option right here to run as administrator, or you can right click on the option that shows up in the search and choose run as administrator, whichever one you like. Now you will actually get a pop-up that's confirming that you want to open that window. It's probably not showing on the screen right now because it overrides everything else that happens. And I'll find out when I rewatch this video if it shows or not. But at that point, you just click on the yes to confirm that yes, you are initiating this particular function. Now, if that window ever pops up and it's not because of something you did, you're just surfing the internet, or especially you downloaded something on the internet or recently installed something off of the internet that maybe you're not 100% sure of, and you get a pop-up like that, that's when you say no. If you didn't start it, say no. But in this command prompt, here it will also even let you know that you're in the administrator mode. And now you simply type in what I have here. SFC, and you do need a space and then the forward slash, which is by the right shift button, and then scan now. And then of course you hit enter. And that will give you a progress update while it runs. On a Windows 10 fairly new computer, this should only take a couple of minutes, less than 10 I would say. But no matter how long it takes, again, be patient and let it run. If it does take a while, that could be because it is doing a lot of repairs. And as you can see here, my scan came back complete. Honestly, this only did take 2 minutes or so. And it comes back, and it did say that it found corrupt files and successfully repaired them. And I actually wasn't even having any known problems. So it found something, and it did some repairs, and it let me know that. If it could not repair them, it would of course also mention that. Or if it didn't find any files or any corruption, it would tell you that. It also gives you some information about looking at a log here. And you can do that, but honestly, that's for programmers and that. It doesn't really give much information that pretty much anybody can understand in a normal situation. I looked at it and, besides maybe it points out exactly what file it did a repair on, but again, those individual files don't mean anything to us normal people. And hopefully that will fix different problems that go on with your computer. The next option is another command prompt. And I worded this one a little bit differently, because if you do any kind of searching on your own, you may see it described differently for this, how to bring up the command prompt. The first time I said open a command prompt, and this time I have run a command prompt. Same thing, just slightly different way of explaining it. Again, this one also needs to be run as administrator. I've already got the window open, so I'm just going to leave that open rather than showing you how to open the administrator window again. And here we're going to run something called chkdsk. And from the sound of the name, it is going to check your actual hard drive for errors, and it can also attempt to repair those. Whether it finds files that are corrupt this way, or even if it finds a physical problem with the hard drive itself. That is more for what I'm going to refer to as an older spinning hard drive, where most computers today have what they call an SSD, which is just a big memory chip, kind of like RAM, where it's much faster and it is not as susceptible to having physical damage as the spinning drives were. But we have found throughout the years that many of the repair tools that you would use on the spinning drive still do find issues and fix things with these SSDs, because even though they're not physical, the way that they store the information, just the bits in that in the magnetic memory, can get messed up in some ways, a little corrupt or whatever. So if it notices that, it can say, I'm going to move this particular file or piece of information from where it is to another place that is in better condition. So we type in these letters, chkdsk space C:, because that is the drive letter where we are going to be working with your Windows installation. It's what most people have on their computer. Not as many people have other drive letters as they used to, but you can run this on an external drive if you have a USB stick or an external drive, or if you do have more than one hard drive on your computer, you can designate whatever drive letter that you need to run this on. F for fix, forward slash, which is beside the right shift button, F for fix, forward slash, R for repair, forward slash, X for what they call dismount the hard drive. That just means take it out of operation. And when you hit enter on this, it is going to tell you that it can't lock the current drive, and it will prompt you to either hit yes or no to run this on the next time the computer reboots. Since it can't be run while you're actually using it, you hit yes. I am going to hit no because I don't want to run that right now and destroy my recording. And when you hit yes, it will just come back to this prompt here. It will not force a reboot at this point. It will wait until you do the reboot. So from there, click on your start button, power, and restart. And this will also take a few minutes, possibly actually a lot longer than SFC would have, because it is actually checking every what they call sector of the hard drive for errors. And if you have a very large hard drive, that can take a while. Most of today's personal computers and that on Windows 10 might come with a 256 hard drive, maybe 500, and hopefully they are an SSD, so that will also speed up how long it takes. But if you have a large hard drive, a terabyte or more, and if it is the older spinning hard drive, it could definitely take hours, honestly, for that to run. So do this reboot when you have some time to let it run and walk away and do something else. Hopefully it will only take a few minutes, 20 minutes, half an hour for pretty much modern Windows 10 quote-unquote normal sized hard drive, but be prepared for it to take a while. It will show you a progress bar on the reboot, or not a bar, but it will show you a progress indicator when it's booting up, also on a black screen. And I can't remember if it actually shows you that it repaired things. If it does, it shows on the screen fairly quickly before it boots into Windows. But it's just one of those things that you run, and if it fixes it, it's good. If not, you might not honestly know. And the next thing is a little more advanced. It is more of a Windows repair than the others. And again, it could take a few minutes to run. I think I've seen it take half an hour. But again, it might not take that long on most computers. Hopefully not. But be prepared for it to take a while, because this does a more thorough searching of your Windows files, and it will replace them if it needs to. Again, you open up the command window or command prompt, and you type in this line here. Usually that will work just fine, but if for some reason your computer provider, Dell, HP, whomever, if for some reason these files aren't stored on the computer, or if there's a more serious problem, it can't find the files on its own, you could type something in longer that will tell it more or less where to find the files. And I believe you could actually type in something like C:" here as well when it gets to that point. I've only done that once or twice, and I've mainly done that when the computer wouldn't start at all and I was running this from either a USB stick or a Windows repair prompt that comes up when Windows realizes it can't run on its own. So hopefully you won't have to deal with that. If it does, that is probably a point where you might actually want to take the computer to an actual technician and have someone take a closer look at it. You should just be able to type in this first line to get it to work. And DISM stands for Deployment, Image, Servicing, and Management. And as the deployment might suggest, this is kind of more or less designed for like business administrations who have an actual team to deploy computers and Windows, and this is a tool that can be used usually by a more advanced team to try to repair things. But honestly, this is still pretty basic. It just scans the computer and tries to repair some missing files. And it's the last, more or less basic thing that a normal person can try to do before they need to take the computer somewhere. So it's DISM .exe, because you are running a program on the computer. It needs to be explained a little bit more than the other chkdsk and sfc, which are just known by the DOS or the command window of exactly what that means. But dism.exe space / again by the right shift button, online / space / cleanup dash image space / restore health. And again, that will start to run and give you a progress. Again, give it time. If it seems like it stops at a percentage, it's doing something at that point, possibly repairing files or trying to pull the files that it was searching for. Just let it run, and you can see this percentage is running up pretty fast here because I do have an SSD, and although my computer is a few years old, it's still very fast. Now the online part of that command I don't believe has anything to do with being internet online. In fact, I ran this on another computer that I turned off the Wi-Fi, so it wasn't online, and it still ran just fine. It means online as in inside Windows, because if you needed to run this command from a USB stick or from the Windows repair, that might come up because Windows realizes it can't start. You don't type online, you'd actually type offline. So this particular online here doesn't have anything to do with the internet. Although in my research for this, one of the things did mention that it might reach out to the internet to try to find some updated files. But it doesn't need to. Especially if you end up using the second command that I have here longer, where it has the actual source. That means it's going to go right to your hard drive and run and pull the files from that. So this can be run especially if you're not online. And again, that completed. And it does, I don't believe either way this gives you much information. It doesn't tell you what files it may have fixed if it does. It just says the operation completed successfully. And at this point you could close out your command window, because this is the end of these tips. And although none of these I believe require a reboot, I usually reboot the computer after running this group of commands. Again, just let Windows clear everything out and kind of start from scratch again. And hopefully that will make your computer run a little more smoothly if it was acting a little bit weird. And if not, as I said a couple seconds ago, probably a minute or two now, if not, that might come to a point where you actually need to take the computer somewhere and have it looked at.